welcome you all to Trek Wars. Alright, I can see we have a lot of new people, and some of them are asking about my data tables and how they work. So for all those new people, I want to show you guys how they work, what we're doing. So we're using a Lakota, which is a ship that the Galaxy-class Starship Enterprise D destroyed, and it's a Miranda variant, and it's got a weapons payload, and it's considered a defense value of Type 3, I think is what they said. But anyways, so let's talk about the ship. Let's analyze the ship. Let's figure out how am I figuring out these power levels and the shields and how does it work. And I'll tell you guys right now, don't put too much thought into it. It's actually really, really simple. Okay, so we're going to pick the Lakota, which is a medical ship in the 24th century, and designed is based off the Miranda. So we know it has one photon torpedo tube, and it has technically 14 phaser Type 7 emitters. Now, the true power level is 2,812. I don't like that weird number, so I just, go ahead and fix it up, make it a little pretty, and just turn it into 2,800 to make it easier. Okay, so the first thing that we would do is we would need to figure out, obviously, what our weapons value is. Now, I have different formulas from different movies and things of that nature, and I found comparing the Miranda hull and the Constitution hull and then dividing their mass out, I found out that the Miranda's hull value based off that way, because I already knew what the hull value was of the Enterprise. And so then how many shots, how many torpedoes that it took, I subtracted the torpedoes, and then what was left over I divided by how many times the USS Reliant was hit, and then it turned out that the Type 7 phaser emitters are 2,812, but I went ahead and changed it to 2,800 because it looks better. Now, torpedoes are 65,000 on my point scale. So I already know that ratio. I've already gotten it. So that's the first thing they got to do. So whatever formulas that you use, you can then use my formula that I do, which is super easy. Getting the ratios for weapons is the hard part. Once you've gotten that or figured that out, physics papers or someone else's, channel or whatever, or mine, do whatever. Okay, so now that we know what our values for our weapons are, now we need to identify where the weapon modules are, and then we need to identify how many there are. All right, so we know that, for example, the Lakota has dual Type 7 phaser emitters. So there are two emitters in each little section there. So you got two of them. So you got, just on the top section alone, you got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 6. And then there's another 3 dual phaser. So you got 12 altogether. And then you have 1 photon torpedo tube. So you just add all those weapon points together. Okay, so once you add them all together, you'll get like 98,600. So the model I have here is based off one of the role-playing manuals that were made, and it says that this ship technically has more than 12, and it actually has 14. So that's where the 104,200 is coming from. All right, so how I determine the ship's hull value is based on how much damage it takes from an existing weapon point that we know. So for an example, a photon torpedo from a Galaxy-class starship is the same torpedoes that are seen on Deep Space Nine. They hit for 173,000 points of damage. So that means that 3 torpedoes can kill a Jem'Hadar fighter. One single torpedo hitting the hull of this ship is destroying it outright. So what that tells me is that the hull value of the science ship is not the same as the Miranda. It's actually lower. So whatever happens on screen is what, for me, takes over. So screen is canon, then it's followed by let's say the manuals or a Eagle Moss magazine, something along those lines. And then if I don't have any of that, then I'll go to like some of those tabletop games as a last resort. But those tabletop games are really good for Kirk era starships, but they don't really have a whole lot for the other ones. And I kind of take them with a grain of salt. So canon, then the magazines, like the official Star Trek magazines, books, manuals, that kind of things. And then the games, those tabletop kind of games and things, those for me fall behind. And then if I don't have any of that data, if I have something from a video game, then I'll take that. But the video games are absolutely last for me. Okay, so now you know how I got the attack value. Now you know how I get the hull. And I'll tell you, I do the exact same thing for the shields. So for the shields, basically what I did is I know the value of the Constitution class Rift. And the Constitution class Rift can take 6 shots and then its shields collapse. So that's 390,000. So when I look at the Constitution class and I look at the Reliant, the manuals, or not the manuals, but I guess the Star Trek manuals, the Star Trek books, they talk about how these ships are using the same components. And so because they're using the same components, I then was like, okay, so the shields are 390,000. They're going to use the same shield bubble as the Rift because they're using the same parts. They're using the Constitution parts. So they're both considered, Rift ships. Now, when I look at the third source, which is the tabletop games, there is a slight deviant in shield strength, and it says that this ship's shields are slightly stronger than the Constitution class, but they don't recharge as fast. Now, obviously, my point scale systems don't accommodate for every single variable, but I'm taking the information that's in the actual Star Trek books. Those are going to take precedence over the Star Trek game manuals. So game manuals are kind of made just to kind of make things, a game kind of format. So they are my third source that I go to if I need to. But for this case, I already had the secondary source, and that secondary source is going to take priority. So now you know how I got the shields. Now you know how I get the hull value. And then now you know what the defense is, because obviously the shields and the hull combined together make the defense. And the attack value is based off just the actual value points that are on my scale per module on the ship. So each module, when I say that, I mean a weapon point. So you have 1 torpedo launcher. This ship has 14 Type 7 phaser emitters. So that's its value. Okay, so now you know what I'm doing and what it does. Now we're talking about some of the things that are not so good about the skills and how I do it. The amount the ship can fire, so a full barrage, isn't accounted in this. So if you have a torpedo launcher that launches 1 torpedo, you're getting a point scale of 65,000, right? Now let's say you have a torpedo launcher that's like the Katanga, and you can shoot 3. You still are only getting 65,000 point scale on these point scale volumes, which, especially for the bird of prey, it's 236,000, and it's less than the Miranda class. But technically, the bird of prey really outguns this ship by a lot. So the reason there are so many more weapon modules on the Miranda class, but they're old, obsolete weapons. And so it's not really as powerful as it looks on here, when reality is the bird of prey is a much better ship. So the bird of prey can fire something like 16 times, and it comes up to like 520,000 points of damage on the scale. Now, the Miranda is going to attack the bird of prey, and this is a TNG bird of prey, right? The Miranda has Type 7 phasers. If it fired its Type 7 phasers 20 times, and they're at 200 or 2,800, it's something like 56,000, something like that. So that is just absolutely nothing compared to what the bird of prey is doing. So because it doesn't account for how many times your weapon slot fires, it can be misleading. And so usually when you see my ships I will make sure I point that out and say that, and then talk about the module so that way you can understand. So a bird of prey is going to have one torpedo launcher, two disruptors. But those disruptors are, number one, significantly higher caliber weapon, and they fire slightly less than the Federation Type 8 phaser, or not Type 8, Type 7 phaser, but it's like 30 times as strong. So those are the kind of things that don't really work out very well. This is really good for basically shields and hull. It works really well. The only ships that are kind of an exception to this rule is it kind of makes Cardassian ships stronger than what they should be. Okay, so there are some unique technologies that are different that do make the scaling somewhat off. So a prime example of this is the Galor. So the Galor's front shield is able to take 3 shots from a Galaxy-class starship, and then they completely collapse. And that's 195,000. Now, when you go and you look at the shield matrix that it has, it's telling you that it's 780,000. And that's because it has a front shield, a rear shield, and then 2 side shields. And they're 4 shield generators on the Cardassian ships because of their lack of shielding technology. So the shield is being told to you, the audience, that it's 780,000, and so you're thinking it has a shield of 780,000, when in reality that shield in the front goes down after 195,000 points of damage. That's really not a very good shield. That's really, really poor. I mean, that's less than a Constitution class shielding. So some of these stats are going to be somewhat incorrect when you look at them because of that. So Cardassian ships look weaker in firepower because of it, and then their shielding looks better than what it should be. So there are a few like strange ships and anomalies, but for the most part, it does give you a pretty decent understanding of what the ship can and cannot do. All right, so all you new people to the channel, I'm so glad that you're watching my videos. I really hope that this answers the questions that I've been getting about the formulas and where they're coming from, and if I just make them up or if there's some source material. The answer is there's no single source material. There's always multiple sources of material. And when I do get contradictory information, like I said, it goes what's on screen, what's canon, then it goes to what's written down in the manuals. And then after the Star Trek books, manuals, then I go to like the book materials that are like the games and stuff like FASA and things like that. And if I don't have anything from those 3 materials and there's something on like a video game, I will take that as a last resort. But that is basically how I do my formulas. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for watching the videos, and Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you for watching Trek Wars. If you like this material, please subscribe and make a comment. And with that being said, victory is life.